what Alex Jones thinks of the situation with regard to Iran. Like and subscribe.
Now, with you, I don't like to ask for specific questions, Alex. Instead, I'll ask probably the broadest question I can ask is, what's worrying you the most at the moment, especially when it comes to mainly about Iran and what's happening in the region? Because there's all these different things. There's the alliance between Pakistan, Saudi, and Turkey. You've got the Israelis saying they're not going to abide by what Trump wants with Gaza, and they're saying that they will strike Iran if Iran builds up its missile program, even if the Americans are not involved. Then you've got the US getting more and more involved in the region. You've got the Iranians being pretty demanding in what they want. They're like, we want a 5 to 7% fee. We will control the Strait of Hormuz. We'll decide which ships go in and out even after the deal is done. We want reparations. We want all sanctions lifted, everything unfrozen. And there's a report that came out today is that the Iranians, not a report, a statement by the advisor to Ghalibaf, the Speaker of the Parliament, saying, we're not even going to do a deal with Trump. We're just going to wait him out and do a deal with the next president.
Oh, yeah, that'd be something. No, that's not even possible, because Strait of Hormuz needs to be open. We can't have the Strait of Hormuz closed for 2.5 years.
So out of all this, what's concerning you the most?
Well, this has been the same story for 160 plus days of this war. Israel drug us into it. Israel bragged that they did it. They launched Midnight Hammer.
Yep.
14 months ago, they launched this new attack. Their own finance minister said 2 weeks ago that this is ideal to have the U.S. fighting Iran for them. And so once Iran's been engaged and pushed into this, they're going to close the strait, as they've done again. They're going to use that leverage, and they know that basically Trump doesn't hold the cards. And then Israel has said, we're going to hit them as soon as we can. It doesn't matter what the United States does. We're going to, whenever we want, we'll keep hitting Lebanon.
It's election season in Israel, too. And Netanyahu is a war hawk. He's going to be, yes, saying very aggressive things. Whether he's going to follow through with all of them, I don't know. Israel does have a pretty good track record of following through with their insane comments, though.
We'll keep doing what we're doing in Gaza. We'll expand into Syria. And so once Trump committed to this, once Trump initiated this, he gave all the cards to Iran so that they can close the strait and say that's his fault because he started it. And so if you really look at this every week, it's the same story over and over again. And then Trump says, don't worry, I've got a new deal. And then Iran says, no, you don't have a deal. You need to agree to all this stuff you haven't agreed to. And so it's a trap that basically Israel created and got us into, hoping that the closure of the strait gets so bad for the economy that finally Trump goes with this attack as big as World War II, which hints at nuclear weapons. We've not done anything like this since World War II. He talked about a glowing crater, one nation, one glowing crater, a culture never to return, to die in one day. So we're talking about nuclear weapons, and the surrogates like Mark Levin and the now deceased Lindsey Graham have said, let's use nuclear weapons like Harry Truman on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We just passed the 80th anniversary of that last week. So it's the same story, and Trump just keeps calling it a renegotiation because he doesn't want to admit strategic defeat. But the Pentagon predicts...
Yeah, that's exactly it. Trump doesn't want to admit defeat. That's why we are where we are, in this no man's land. And it's going to continue there until the consequences of the Strait of Hormuz being closed finally start wrecking the global economy.
Did a strategic defeat. Joe Kent warned Trump of a strategic defeat. Tulsi Gabbard warned him of one. So Trump continues to act like there's a negotiation because he put us into a no-win situation. We can't win a ground war. Our munitions are more than half expended. It'll take years to replenish them. We don't even have munitions to protect the United States or fight China or Russia. Now Kiev can't even respond with interceptor missiles when Russia strikes back.
All true.
Because they're out and the U.S. isn't shipping them to them. And, of course, 2 weeks ago we had the head of the European Command tell Trump we have to choose between America and Israel because, even forget all the other Gulf allies, because we're out of missiles for our missile defense systems that are ground-based and on the missile cruisers, the destroyers, that protect us from Russian submarine, Chinese submarine attack, or intercontinental ballistic missile attack. And so this is a true strategic defeat. We're in it, and Trump knows there's not an exit ramp because Iran holds the card. So instead, he keeps us in this purgatory or this limbo of, we've got a deal. I was going to destroy it.
The Strait of Hormuz are open. Did you know that? That's what Trump is. He was asked today, when will the Strait of Hormuz be open? And his response are, they're open right now. He's in... That's the situation we're in. Trump is pretending we've won. We, the United States, have won, despite obviously having suffered strategic defeat. And we're in that limbo.
Them worse than World War II, biggest attacks since World War II, but now they came back to the table And the Iranians go, yeah, it's the same agreement. $500 million or its equivalent, which is now the 7% or whatever, and you will pull your troops out of the Middle East. But effectively, it's already happened other than Israel and Jordan because the United States forces are open to Iranian attack. So Trump had a great policy before of just maximum sanctions. That was actually working. But now once he was induced into this war with Iran, which Israel thinks helps it as a smokescreen for Greater Israel Project, but at the end of the day, I think it hurts Israel as well. This is a true disaster.
There was a report yesterday, a couple of days ago, that General Dan Kane was telling Trump that an air operation alone just won't work, and asking him to just off-ramp, to just walk away. Now, some people think that Trump will...
You'd think Trump would have figured this out by now after 40 days of bombing, then another 2 weeks of bombings just lately, that he would have realized that the bombs aren't really helping.
Instead of looking at walking away, he's like, oh, air operation doesn't work. I'm going to go for a ground operation and have boots on the ground as the next solution to achieve my objectives. But that's not the question on whether you'll see troops on the ground in Iran. It's more so we're seeing all these leaks. We're seeing a lot of people like Joe Kent and others, and Tulsi being out of the administration, MAGA base turning on Trump. But do you think people around Trump in that close circle, we hear rumors, disagreement between J.D. Vance and Trump, someone standing in the way between Netanyahu meeting Trump. But within the military, do you think there's, and you speak to a lot of people there, I'm not going to ask, are they turning on Trump? But is there a certain, kind of an understanding within the military that how bad this war's turned out and his decisions have really weakened the military preparedness of the United States? We saw, actually, there was a statement by the EUCOM commander talking about how he won't send a warship to the region, to CENTCOM, because he wants to protect American bases in Europe and not protect Israel. That was just a few days ago. And I was told that other commanders in different command centers were, in a very similar position. They don't want to send their munitions and their missiles and their military assets to CENTCOM. So, not sure if you're seeing a trend like this or you're hearing about such a trend.
Well, I mean, it's more than a trend. You just mentioned the head of the European...
The title of this is U.S. military turning on Trump after Iran war failure. We're getting into that topic.
Command, now almost a week and a half ago, saying we have to choose between protecting North America, CONUS, or Israel and the Middle East. We can't do it. We've depleted more than half the missiles. It takes on average 4 years to restore those. And so the Pentagon is just being louder about what it said 5 days before this war started, 160-something days ago. They put out a report and leaked it saying the mullahs aren't going to fall. They'll close the strait. It'll become a strategic disaster. And so, yes, Joe Kent's never released anything classified, but when he was the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, he was just seeing the very same Pentagon reports that have been declassified versions have been leaked. And I interviewed him Saturday night, and he looked at me on the camera and he said, look, Alex, it's not that I'm some super genius. These are the Pentagon reports. As you know, you've seen the declassified versions. It was a known truth. It was a total consensus. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Kane, told Trump 5 days before, we are probably not going to get the regime change that you and Israel want. That's what it really was. Now, if you really want to just degrade their missiles or whatever, that's one thing, but they will target our allies, and they will target our bases, and they will target our ships. And then you saw Trump try to order the Navy to send in ships to open the strait in the last 100-plus days, and then they won't do it because they're sitting ducks, not just of high-tech missiles.
Trump watches 3 hours of Fox News a day. His worldviews are shaped by Fox News, and Fox News says that the United States is this uncontested military power, undefeatable. There's nothing United States military can't do. And so Trump has this idea that we could, of course we win against Iran. Of course we can just send in warships and take the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, the reality is different from what Fox News, the narrative spun by Fox News. And this entire war is partly a consequence of that and some bad intel from Netanyahu.
Missiles, and not just the Chinese anti-ship missiles they have, but also just conventional missiles, drones, and artillery. It's only 18 miles straight. It is a sitting duck there. And so this was a known disaster. It's why no other president ever did this against Iran. Iran's 93 million people. It's surrounded by mountains like Mordor. And it's probably 20 times harder to defeat than Iraq, just because the way it's set up. It's not flat desert.
This is Iran for you. A mountain fortress. This right here. All of this, Iran.
And then the Tigris-Euphrates Valley, a very low river valley. So there's nothing there in Iraq. That was a disaster. Afghanistan was a disaster. This is much, much worse. And now Iran, by targeting U.S. bases around the region, has sucked in all these other groups. And notice Now that Saudi Arabia and Turkey are hearing they're next up on the platter, with Israel openly targeting Turkey with its rhetoric, they're now forming major alliances with Pakistan and others because of this understanding. Remember, Pakistan is a nuclear power. And the intel I had over 15 years ago was Saudi Arabia quietly had a squadron of aircraft in Pakistan with hydrogen bombs ready to be put on them, where they didn't technically have nukes, but in an emergency with their defense agreement, they would have nukes if they were attacked. Now, a couple months ago, they moved that squadron back to Saudi Arabia with 5,000 to 8,000 Pakistani troops who guard the warehouses that have the Pakistani nukes. But then once the defense agreement is triggered by Saudi Arabia being attacked, then Pakistan green lights the nukes going onto the planes that are now under the control of Saudi Arabia. So you just see more of a formalization of the more secretive agreements that have already been signed. So Israel's attempt.
That's interesting. So technically, Saudi Arabia already has nukes. Isn't that lovely? Just like Israel doesn't acknowledge having nukes, Saudi Arabia isn't acknowledging the nukes that are on its territory either.
At greater living space, Israel's attempt at a greater Israel is now backfiring spectacularly.
And you've got Turkey as well as part of that alliance. And Turkey's now, one could say Turkey's protected by both American nukes. America's got nukes inside Turkey and Pakistani nukes because they've got a similar NATO Article 5 like agreement between Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi. But that's pretty worrying considering the rhetoric by Turkey towards Israel and vice versa.
Well, that's because even though Israel worked with Turkey to overthrow Assad 2 years ago, I'm sorry, it's just the truth. I'm not even anti-Israel. I'm anti-Israel's current leadership. Israel's leadership, as you know, over a year ago began saying, next enemy, Turkey, and then now even Netanyahu said it on Fox News a month ago.
Yep.
And Egypt. I mean, Egypt has sat there and put up with hell from Israel. So Israel is
part of Egypt is inside of Greater Israel.
Already looking on past Lebanon, past Syria to Turkey and Egypt. And then Saudi Arabia is not stupid. That means, well, if you're going after them, you're going to go after us. So it's forcing those alliances right now.
Yeah, Egypt was apparently meant to join the defense agreement with Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi. But
this is an interesting story.
Didn't, because I don't know if you saw that report today. Apparently, they baited them. So the Pakistanis and the Saudis gave false intelligence to Egypt. But there it is here. They gave them false intelligence, or they call it intelligence bait. They gave it to Sisi, the president of Egypt, to see if he's going to share it with the U.S. And Sisi shared it with the U.S. So, according to the report, Saudi, Turkey, and Pakistan no longer trusted Egypt and decided not to include them in the defense agreement. But it's still a consideration, and everyone I would expect.
And you just hit the key. I saw that. What does that tell you? That means Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan no longer trust the U.S. because they're worried that AIPAC and Israel are really in full control of the United States.
Exactly. So this is a huge implication that I hadn't really thought of before. Yes, there's a bill being passed in Congress to integrate the U.S. and Israeli military technology and intelligence. So Israel is going to know all our military secrets, all our military technology, and all our intel. Anything that CIA or one of our intelligence agencies picks up goes automatically to Israel. Now that's a problem because for places like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, well, any of Israel's neighbors, Israel isn't exactly friendly towards its neighbors. And that means now they can't share anything with the United States without it ending up to Israel too. So they can't, like if they give a warning, oh, Israel is planting this false flag, and they give that warning to the United States, then Israel will find out, oh, it was that country that ratted us out, and they'll know who gave the warning. So it's going to hamper intelligence sharing between all countries in the region and the United States, and it's going to push countries and regions to do stuff like this alliance and to move away from the United States. I mean, it makes sense. Israel forcing the United States closer to itself is going to push everyone else away from the United States.
And they see Israel getting wild-eyed, saying, we dominate, we're the new superpower, we're taking over. And they've been trying to partner with Israel, the Abraham Accords and other things. They're just like, this is too much. So the distrust is as heavy, as you cut it with a knife in the air. And so that's where we are. It's a total escalation.
That's a very good point. I'm just sending it to my team. I didn't think of it. Didn't click. that I like the idea that they're testing Egypt to see if they can trust Egypt, but they're testing Egypt with intelligence for the US, which indicates they don't want any country part of that pact to share things with the United States. Turkey's and part of NATO. Saudi's an ally to the US.
Because the U.S. already gives basically all the intel in the Middle East, Israel. Now under the new NDAA bill that's passed the House, everything is given to them lifetime. Not like Five Eyes, where it's counterterrorism intelligence. It's everything.
Yeah, everything. And you've got to think countries in the regions that are like have a monitoring some type of internet traffic or sorry about that. Some that are monitoring some type of internet traffic or what ships are coming in and out of the Gulf and sharing that with the United States live in real time. Well, now after this agreement, I think, well, I don't want to share this information with Israel real time, so I maybe have to stop sharing it with the United States real time. That's the type of thing that's going to happen. Intelligence gathering from our allies in the Middle East is going to shrink. They're not going to share as much with us because everything they share with us, they're going to go on the assumption it's going to end up in Israeli hands in real time, and they don't want that. So we're going to be blinded in the Middle East by Israel forcing us to share all our intel.
Jesus. That's part of the NDAA, the clause that is passed the House.
Section 219 passed the House, yeah. It was Section 224. They changed the bill. Netanyahu sent letters to the committee chairman thanking them for adding his language. He wrote, Benjamin Netanyahu says in a letter, no one's disputed it, that he wrote Section 219.
How insane is that, Alex?
Yeah, he's not joking. Section 219, Netanyahu actually wrote it. Congress is passing legislation written by a foreign leader. God, it's clown world.
When you read the bill, it says merge, live time, synchronization from research and development to battlefield to telemetry to weapons deployment, and that Israel will co-own the weapon systems. So, I mean, I don't blame.
And Asmongold still doesn't know about this because doesn't know anything in the Middle East except what he's as informed as Trump, which is Fox News level.
Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan watching the U.S. get ready to marry. I mean, the U.S. and Israel are up there with the preacher about to put rings on. And so they're like, okay, well, we're not going to share intel with anybody that shares intel with you.
Yeah. Asmongold is not aware that he's about to marry Israel. He might have objections to that.
Because Israel is literally licking its lips saying next up are these other countries.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I didn't connect those dots. That is the defense agreement between those countries, which is already, they're doing this as a way to fill the hole that is left by the U.S. because the U.S. will have to pull out of the region, and the U.S. has shown its, I wouldn't say inability to defend, but definitely not be able to meet the expectations of what those countries are looking for. But
no, it's worse than inability to defend. It was America's actions that put all these countries at risk to begin with. There was peace in the Middle East until Trump came along and bombed Iran's supreme leader.
Cannot be trusted to drag all these countries into this war. So these countries are looking for an alternative to the U.S., mainly because the U.S. will have to slowly reduce its presence in the region after losing this war.
And but to their credit, they're not going to China and Russia to be their sugar daddy. They're trying to work together.
Yeah, not going.
But that shows the disaster of the Greater Israel Project. Is that you've got their finance minister 2 weeks ago saying this is ideal. We have the U.S. fighting our enemy for us and destabilizing the whole region and our enemies. And people are like, you destabilize all your enemies? You mean like Iran? They said all our enemies. So Israel, the current leadership, sees any prosperity and any stable, successful society around them as a threat. So,
well, not only as a threat, but there's a map that hangs on Netanyahu's office. Greater Israel. Here we go. Greater Israel. Notice it's a huge chunk of Saudi Arabia, huge chunk of Egypt, most of Syria, half of Iraq, all of Jordan, Lebanon. All its neighbors, Israel views as land that must be conquered. He doesn't want a stable Saudi Arabia, a stable Egypt, a stable Syria, a stable Iraq. If there was a stable Iraq, then Iraq might be able to defend itself at some point in the future when Israel tries to take a big chunk out of Iraq. This stupid map is responsible for so much bloodshed in the Middle East.
By extension, then anybody that's successful goes, oh, I'm an enemy.
There's a report that came out today as well. So there it is. And this is a good question for you. It came out from Khan News, Israeli media. It says officials from one Middle Eastern country advised the counterparts, so other countries in the region, in another region. Okay, sorry, I'll restart. Officials from one Middle Eastern country advised.
Vague stories like this. One party said to another party we don't know the something or other. I think it's worthless info.
Counterparts in another regional state, so one country in the Middle East told another country in the Middle East to show tactical flexibility towards Israel and reach an agreement intended to lull Israel into sleep while preparing for a larger future conflict. The proposed strategy involved reaching an agreement with Israel to lower its guard while simultaneously preparing for war before breaking.
So we don't know which country told which country what. Like, what type of agreement? Which country? Yeah, this is useless info.
The agreement once preparations are complete. Israeli military censorship prohibits identifying either of these two countries involved. So what this report is saying by Khan News is that there's a country in the Middle East telling another country, like, hey, do an agreement with Israel, lull them, make them feel secure, make them feel safe, put down their guard, prepare for war, and then break the agreement and attack Israel.
Yeah, that sounds like Pakistan.
First, do you think this report is true? Or do you think this is planted by the Israeli policymakers to...
No, I was about to say, if you're...
It doesn't even matter if the story is true or not. Something that vague has no meaning to begin with anyway.
Believe it would be Pakistan who's got the nukes. But let me tell you, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, even Turkey has anti-Israel rhetoric just for the voters, but they've done everything Israel wants. They've done everything Trump wants.
They are U.S. puppet states. So yes, Saudi Arabia has been used as staging ground for operations against Iran, same as Jordan, same of Qatar, Kuwait, United Emirates. Only one that hasn't been used for actually attacking Iran is Turkey. But Turkey provides fuel to Israel. Limitless fuel that Israel uses to attack Iran. So maybe air bases in Turkey haven't been used. It is contributing to the anti-Iran effort.
I mean, Turkey does whatever we want since World War II. I'm not defending Erdogan or saying he's perfect, but I mean, come on. Those folks want business. They want to be successful. I mean, Saudi Arabia wants golf courses and movie production, and they want to move on. And that's why they did the Abraham Accords. They've really been trying to work with Israel. And now, because they see this behavior of Israel, and if you watch Israeli TV, the Knesset members are all over it, just literally saying, we're taking over, we run America, we're going to take over the whole Middle East, everything's ours. You have the U.S. ambassador, or the Israeli ambassador,
Mike
Huckabee saying, of course, Israel gets it all. So they're watching the U.S. ambassador.
At least Lindsey Graham isn't around anymore to say the exact same thing.
Saying, yeah, Israel gets basically the entire Middle East. And people are watching that going, I mean, they take that serious. And then they look at Ben-Gvir running around psychotically saying we're taking over and we're going to take all of Lebanon and we're going to take Syria and no one can stop us. And people look at that and they go, well, we better get together then, because if Israel's successful, fully taking control of our military, then we've got a problem. And again, it doesn't sound rational to a rational person.
On its maps that it uses officially, Israel has already annexed a huge chunk of Lebanon, even more than they've actually conquered. They already have it on their maps as being part of Israel. Yeah, a nation that hungry for land, you can never have peace with it.
But Israel's done the calculations and thinks it's going to be able to bring down the whole Middle East.
How do you think this will end up for the region? Are you more optimistic? You think they'll find an agreement? Israel, will, when it loses American support, will change its foreign policy and things will improve? Or they're heading down a much more dangerous path?
Well, obviously, the smart money is things are escalating and getting worse. Does that mean they couldn't turn around? I hope they do. They could. There's still some sanity, hopefully, in the universe. But when you have Iran, who I'm not a fan of the Shiite mullahs and the 12th Imam and all that, but they didn't start this. And when you have Israel saying, kill their leaders and they'll give up, anybody can tell you that'll make them fight harder. Yep. Israel admits they wanted a long war. They wanted a quagmire. And so the only cards Iran has is the Strait of Hormuz and not giving up, which is the cards. It's not just the only cards. It is the cards.
Even if it's their only cards, my God, it's one hell of a card. It's a card that can bring down the global economy.
by attrition, getting a strategic defeat of the United States. And so the region sees that, and they see that Iran is not going to back down. And so they can think ahead and go, oh, wow, the U.S. will probably at some point break. It's probably not going to give up, can't, because the Iranians have closed the strait. It's going to hit them even harder. And then that's going to turn the whole world against Israel and the U.S. even more. And so just out of necessity, the Arab states are preparing for Armageddon and saying, we can't trust the U.S. It's run by Israel. We don't trust Iran. But at the same time, we trust Pakistan and Turkey because they know they're being targeted. And so the big money, Saudi Arabia, is saying, okay, let's have an alliance of survival. And the Saudis already foresaw this when they, again, the articles 15 years ago were seeking nukes from Pakistan. And, oh, the word is they've got an arsenal at a base, at a warehouse, and if it ever gets triggered, under the defense pact, they move back to squadron piloted by their people. And then a few months ago, you saw the thousands of Pakistani troops coming back to guard the warehouses and the planes. They're not guarding a dozen planes because they're just aircraft. They have the nuke, like a football handoff, ready to hand it off in the defense agreement. The Saudis have paid massive amounts of money for this. And the fact that it's gone from being prepared to being greenlit and the safety's been taken off here shows you, now you got a formal alliance, shows you that the Arabs have a backstop if the United States turns against them, because now they don't fully trust the United States, which I think is wise because of how powerful the Israel lobby is. And so it's kind of a Mexican standoff, basically, where everybody's pointing guns at each other.
That is the Middle East.
Do you worry that we could see, because a lot of statements from Israel right now about that Mecca agreement between those three countries that could expand to more countries, including Egypt, a lot of statements by Israel seeing it as a threat. The Iranians have welcomed it. Initially, the Iranians were a bit worried based on one statement, but they said, hey, this is a great idea. Islamic countries should all come together. Let me get you the exact statements. So
well, Iran knows that's going to antagonize Israel, but I mean, absolutely, this is Israel's
Iran could
doing.
be part of it. Iran could join it as well. But do you
Exactly.
think
Israel. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
Well, obviously, the Arab countries and others aren't going to sit around where Israel picks them off one at a time anymore. And so the plan exposed by Wesley Clark 15 years ago is now out in the open. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Israel can't say, okay, the Greater Israel Project's real, and okay, we're unstoppable, and then not expect people to get ready for it.
True.
Is there do you think building that alliance would become a deterrent for Israeli aggression because they're worried now to attack one country? They'll drag all of them into war, or are we seeing kind of the building blocks for another regional conflict involving this time Israel and the rest of the region?
It could go both ways, but the people running Israel want to get the Arabs, if they could, even on board and taking out Iran, while they all basically get weakened, and then Israel later can use that destabilization or maybe even a false flag attack on the Al-Aqsa Mosque that some of their leaders have talked about to then blame Iran or they're just going to keep looking for chaos to exacerbate the chaos. That's what's scary. They don't even really have a plan other than chaos. They can outthink the Arab.
No, there's no plan. Just look at what happened in Syria. They funded ISIS. And yes, it completely wrecked the country, but it didn't immediately take down the Assad regime. It took total like 14 years, from 2011 to 2024, to finally get rid of Assad. It was just constant pressure. That's the strategy of Israel. Constant pressure against all its adversaries, just waiting for them to break, hurting them in every way possible, hurting them by getting the U.S. involved in the war, hurting them by arming the protesters during the quote-unquote peaceful protests earlier this year, and try to fund something like ISIS and start an ISIS inside of Iran. That's what I'm worried about. Don't want another million genocided Christians by Israeli-funded ISIS. Hopefully, it'll be harder for them to do that in Iran. It's not like Syria that's right on their borders. A lot easier for them to get involved. Iran is further removed.
And then, somehow be able to basically overthrow countries piecemeal on their way. But instead, I just see it unifying them basically against the U.S. and Israel in the end. That's why we have the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia telling Trump for months in this war. And so it's hard to predict what's going to happen. But in general, Israel's bit off more than it can chew. The U.S. is discredited in the region, can't protect people. And I don't think I know Israel and its lobby miscalculated and has bit off way more than it can chew. And that's really the story of the Zionists, is they'll get in a good position, they'll be in charge, they keep doubling down. So the boldness early on in the midterm gets them victory, and then they go too far. And it doesn't mean I know what's going to happen, but it's extremely dangerous for everybody. Like, I don't want to blow up Israel. I mean, my God, they got nuclear weapons. As they get in a worse and worse position down the road this year, next year, the year after that, and as they keep doubling down, messing with their neighbors, triggering military.
That 200 nukes to 300 nukes. That's Israel's rumored nuclear stockpile. And a collapsing country, like the U.S.'s empire is collapsing, and Israel is part of that empire, and it's collapsing. What's going to happen to those nukes? Scary.
Attacks, staging false flags, drag us into a larger war. That just ups the stakes here. And as more people get wise to how this game works, I don't see the future of Israel being in a very good position with the behavior of their leaders. The greatest enemies of Israel are in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. It's Likudniks, it's Ben Gvir, it's Smotrich, their finance minister, it's Netanyahu.
They have accumulated so much hatred, like leveling Gaza, what they've done to the West Banks, leveling all those towns in Lebanon, all the people the IDF has killed. I don't see how Israel gets out of this long term. Unless they try a good portion of their population for war crimes. That's what would be necessary to get peace with their neighbors after they lose U.S. protection.
I mean, these are literally megalomaniacs that did have the upper hand, and in their worldview, if I've got the upper hand, why shouldn't I just try to take over? Well, that's like Hitler in 41 saying, I have the biggest military, I should just take over. Well, maybe you do now, but not once you start to fight. People are going to get in a fighting position. New alliances are going to form, and then you're going to run into unseen problems. And so I would say both the EU is going the same way as Napoleon and Hitler attacking Russia. Israel's behaving in a Napoleonic behavior, trying to get delusional. We can totally take over. And the more opposition they get, don't worry, we've got the American superpower behind us. Well, that superpower's out of bullets. And there's major Pentagon opposition because they can think down the road that this is an insane gamble. I was talking to Joe Kent. I was like, he talks to a lot of the top war planners. He said, well, obviously it's classified, Alex, but you're smart. You see the same stuff they see. This is an extremely dangerous gamble with a probability of loss for everybody. So only a crazy person gambles. Plus, why not have an alliance with Saudi Arabia and Turkey and these countries? Why not work with them? Like why do we need, if we can beat them, why don't we try?
One aspect to this that nearly all commentators miss is a huge part of the Middle East and Northern Africa have been dollarized. Physical dollars in circulation. Why do they using dollar? Because their governments have been destabilized by the United States and Israel, by CIA and Mossad. So no functioning government, no currency, they use the US dollar. Iraq is an example of this. If US and Israel influence wanes and some countries start to get themselves organized into cohesive wholes, they will stop this dollarization. They will introduce their own currency and get rid of the dollars. Now, where do the billions of dollars that are in circulation, for example, in Iraq, go once Iraq de-dollarizes? Well, they come back to the United States and create inflation. There's a boatload of pent-up inflation in the Middle East that, as U.S. loses influence and those dollars come back to the United States, are going to completely wreck our currency. And that's one reason there's constant fighting to get the United States wants to dollarize Iran in the same way, increase the amount of dollars in the region. That lowers inflation in the United States. That's one aspect of this fight. The amount of physical dollars in circulation in the Middle East is key.
Again, it's megalomania. Like, well, I'm not a real man if I don't launch a war and try to dominate them because, if they had the upper hand and were us and all this power, they'd try it too. Well, guess what? They don't have that power. And the only way you destroy our power is misusing it, which we're doing.
Yeah. And China's just watching all this and building their economy, building their military, just having the last laugh.
You just nailed it. China is the winner in this.
Yeah. China does nothing and it wins.
Yeah, it's insane. Every time I have a guest telling me, comparing the shipbuilding capacity, the energy infrastructure that both countries are building between the US and China, economy, literacy rates, etc.
The United States is getting fucked by China. We outsource our manufacturing to China. We outsource our prosperity. It doesn't happen right away. It's this manufacturing sector of a country is its long-term prosperity. That's why everything, quality of life, everything is dropping in the United States. Our military readiness, our ability to make weapons, everything is going down. It's because we don't have the manufacturing anymore. We gave it to China. And that's why China, everything is going up. The quality of life, the military power, the regional influence, everything is on the uptrend is because we gave them their manufacturing. And then the benefits of that are just showing themselves over time. And whereas the benefits we used to enjoy are now disappearing in the United States. I mean, a country without a manufacturing sector is the word for it, a third world country, basically. That's what we will become in the long term unless we somehow manage to rebuild our manufacturing.
Looks really bad. It looks really, really bad and concerning. And it's sad.
It is. And look at Israel's demographics. You know, they have even worse test scores than the average U.S. city. You would think like Israel's these super geniuses, they've been really smart. Did you know they've even got higher dropouts and illiteracy and the same stuff the West has of being spoiled rotten? And so, yeah, we've been the dominant empire. We've been the kings. We've been on top. And what happens when you're like that? You become decadent. Like the Romans literally had hundreds of thousands of Germans and Visigoths that had already invaded the north and burned and destroyed everything. And they didn't even raise an army. They said, oh, they won't dare come to Rome in 410. And you know what happened. And you know, it's the same story. So the West has this feeling of invincibility. And as the actual war planners go, no, Iran holds the cards and we're running out of missiles. And what's Trump do? Secretary of the Navy removed him. Head of the Army removed him. He likes Keynes, so he hasn't removed him. But he's definitely chewed him out, according to my sources, when they tell him. I mean, Trump's come to them and said, invade the Strait. You can't do it. Well, invade Kyrg Island, at least. They go, well, they'll attack our forces once they're there. That's just upon sacrifice. And they explain to Trump second, third, fourth order magnitude. He doesn't want to hear it. At least he's been restrained enough not to go with it, but it's only because he's been convinced by the majority of the war planners that 15,000 Marines and Army Airborne cannot take the Strait of Hormuz. That is insane. But that's the type of stuff he's been talking about. And for those that don't know, it took us 110,000 Marines and sailors to take just one of dozens of islands, Iwo Jima, 23,000 defending Japanese. We lost 24,000 Marines, and it took a month to take it. Well, the Japanese had tanks that had like half-inch thick steel on them, okay? I mean, they were like glorified four-wheelers. And they were tough, but they had bolt-action rifles and a few machine guns, okay? The Iranians' weapons compared to that, and once you get on the ground, all the high-tech stuff doesn't matter as much anymore.
Drones.
Once you're up against that, this is a whole other ballgame. So the Pentagon estimate 200,000 troops with heavy air support, hundreds of helicopters, hundreds of aircraft.
And Trump can't do that because he started this war with no popular support. And if you have no popular support, you have no ability to take casualties. You have no ability to suddenly recruit 100,000 new soldiers to form an army and go in. And he has no time also because Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. And the time it would take to raise up an ground invasion force, it'd be too late. The global economy would be wrecked. So there's nothing Trump can do because he started this war from a position of absolute weakness. You need to have everything in place. You need to have a plan. Number one, a plan, which Trump did not have. Like blockade Iran from day one. Have an invasion force ready day two to go in. Have air superior. Have a plan to deal with the drones. No one has a real way to deal with drones yet, but if the United States came up with a way to deal with drones somehow, then attacking Iran makes a lot more sense. But we didn't do any of that.
And we're still talking about tens of thousands of dead to take the Strait of Hormuz, conservatively. I mean, it is designed to be a killing field.
Military term is a kill box. Where if you go in, they shoot at you from every direction. And there's no safe place for you, and you just die. A kill box.
Yeah, and we'll add drone warfare as well. You look what the Russians are doing. They're sending 3 men at a time just because of drones. You can't have some, big teams of soldiers into the battlefield like you did in World War II back against Japan. So a ground operation would just be suicidal right now. It just that's why I'd be very surprised.
Not to mention that, as one of my viewers mentioned, it's 51 degrees Celsius in the Middle East right now. Let's convert that into Fahrenheit for our American audience. Fahrenheit. 124 degrees. That's how hot it is in the Middle East right now. That is not the temperature to do military operations. That's the temperature you die if you go outside. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but God, it's unpleasant. I would not want to go out in 124 degrees heat. Yeah. That's why no military operations are usually planned during the summer in the Middle East.
As if it's being talked about seriously. But I had a separate question to you. I was just thinking as you're speaking, looking at this war and how things are, we're talking about NDAA and the merging of the two militaries. You're talking about what's happening in the Middle East. But you've been doing this for decades, 10 times longer than I have, more, 15 times more longer than I have. How would you compare the situation now to what it was in your early days?
Well, let me just not kiss your
the
ass.
U.S. as a whole, the U.S. empire.
Absolutely. Let me not kiss your ass, just kiss your ass because you deserve it. I've been watching you like 3 years or something. Your growth curve of understanding has already surpassed me in many ways. How prolific you are, how good it all is. So please don't come to me like I had a slower growth curve 32 years on air. So, Mario, we just nothing but kudos for the insane work you do. You're one of the top, I'd say, 5 journalists in the world right now when it comes to how accurate you are and how prolific. So congratulations.
Yeah. I wish Asmongold would watch even one of your interviews.
But if you ask me from my decades of experience where this is going,
more importantly, the situation right now, like you look at the NDAA, you look at the Iran war, the strategic defeat that the U.S. has gone through, the perception of the U.S. empire, the U.S. military, the fact that the shipbuilding capacity, the fact that the U.S. can't even repair submarines in time, struggling on every front. It can't build the icebreakers that it needs for the Arctic, and it's delegating that to outsourcing that to Canada and I think Denmark. Putting all these things together, and the talk about the end of the U.S. empire. If you put that into context, look at it over the last 30 years, it just seems really bad. I want to see your thoughts putting it in that context, if it is that bad, and how concerned you are.
Well, I don't pull on my 32 years on air. I pull on studying history, thousands of years, and I think you already answered the question. When empires start to overextend and start to die, they almost always die in a death rattle and a lashing out, trying to overextend themselves and prove themselves.
The Suez Canal for the British Empire, this Iran war for the U.S. empire. And it's sort of funny because the deep state, U.S. deep state, I'm now convinced, was not fully on board with this war. Part of it, the Zionist wing of it, wanted this war in Iran. The rest of it was not on board, was like focused on Ukraine and other places. And so they were not prepared for the closure of Strait of Hormuz. That's an example of a dying empire, no longer a cohesive whole, not able to control important events like when this Iran war starts. And then it becomes a huge strategic defeat. Yeah, the ramifications in so many ways of this Iran war. One, like, it exposes the limits of U.S. military might. Two, it reshapes the Middle East in terms of influence. China, Iran, influence up, everyone else influence down. The economic fallout of this, which is going to be oil crisis, it's going to cause a global recession, skyrocketing prices from not only oil, but the food crisis next year. This is, Iran war is going to, the full implications of it is going to play out over years.
And we're doing exactly that right now. So, militarily, intellectually, spiritually, at a gut level, also talking to all the experts that have the very best accuracy records of predicting, we are in a total disaster.
Yeah.
The EU is even more collapsed than the United States.
Oh, EU is so fucked. In terms of natural gas this summer, I had let's go into that about how fucked the EU is quickly. Side tangent.
At only 50%. German gas storage stands at only 50% in early August. In a normal year, we would already be heading toward 90% before the heating season begins in October. That is not happening. Diesel in Munich is already around €2.50. Some stations have no petrol left. Qatar's LNG is still restricted. American exports may be reduced. Europe is walking into winter with critically low reserves. At the same time, the industrial core is collapsing. BMW is cutting 8,000 jobs. Volkswagen has ended.
With hyper expensive energy, your manufacturing sector collapses. You can't competitively manufacture anything.
Its generational job guarantees. Factories are turning into museums. Austria will feel it immediately.
That's not a joke. They're actually some of the car factories, they're shutting them down and turning them into museums. That's thousands of lost jobs, and now you can just go into the factory and see, okay, this is where Germans used to be gainfully employed.
360,000 Austrian jobs depend on the German auto industry. When German production stops, those jobs disappear. Empty storage tanks and rising energy costs are not abstract numbers. They decide the economic future of Germany and Austria right now.
Yep. So that's Europe for you. That natural gas heating for the winter is going to be short by 20 to 30%. I estimate. Now, who's going to freeze? That's the question. That's how bad it is. The poor will freeze.
States empire. It's its own old empire. You got the British Empire that kind of folded in after World War II into the U.S. empire. And all of it is in disarray. The demographics are horrible. The debt is insane.
Yes.
If we would have soft power, sat back and innovated with technology, played nice with people, and gone the economic route, we could have parlayed that into a...
Germany, what used to be the economic powerhouse of Europe, the manufacturing powerhouse of Europe. And the key to its success was cheap Russian energy that made it competitive with the rest of the world. Their energy bill like tripled after cutting themselves off from cheap Russian gas, or even quadruple, I forget. And you can't be competitive in anything with energy costs like that. And that's why Germany is deindustrializing. And Germany was the pillar behind the euro, economic manufacturing pillar that had trade surpluses with everyone. Now that's going to fade. It's just as messed up as the rest of Europe. The EU was the worst thing to happen to Europe.
Dominant seat at the table in the future, but it would be a multipolar world. Instead, we said, no, it's monopolar, and we're going to take on the Russians and take on the Chinese and take on the Middle East and just delusions of grandeur. And so now as that fails, you have the war planners saying, back off, stop, it's not working. You have the Israel AIPAC lobby saying full metal, balls to the walls. And so the Persians are like, fine, we have no choice. They understand it's a death battle. They're balls to the walls. And it is the immovable object running into the unstoppable force. It is going to be explosive. So we're at the end of the fourth turning. These are known cycles, not just myself, but top futurists, top sociologists. And so we are in a period like World War I or World War II, except with nuclear weapons, bioweapons, and 10 billion people. So to overstate the danger level is basically impossible. And our biggest problem is we have too many people like at BlackRock and academics and people that don't know this. Our military, and in past few hundred years.
If you want to know what you can do to try to make the world safer, get awareness of this out. Get people like Asmongold, although he's not streaming right now because Twitch banned him, but he'll be back in a week or 10 days. Get him to watch stuff like this. Get him to actually be informed, because if he's informed, his public is informed, and more people know about the danger, the better chance of the worst case scenario being averted, like nuclear war. Like, if Asmongold knew about the whole situation in Ukraine, he wouldn't be supportive of it. And if he's not supportive of it, that changes public opinion in the United States by several points, like his supporters. And Trump might decide not to send more weapons to Ukraine. And it changes Trump's behavior. It makes the world potentially safer. So spreading awareness of the truth, the reality, is the best way to try to prevent the worst case scenario.
It was using the military that was over-optimistic and would trick us into wars. But then after World War II, the military got even wiser with nukes and said they became a lot of the restraint. I mean, I remember Obama wanted to go to war with Russia when they were in Syria, and they had that chairman of the Joint Chiefs get up and say, you understand, as soon as we hit these Russian sites, they're going to hit us back. That's World War III. And they were smart and didn't do it. But now we're like, oh, let's use Ukraine as the surrogate and we'll bomb them with that, as if the Russians
Exactly. This is the type of stuff Asmongold should be hearing.
won't finally say, now we're going to hit NATO targets, which they're announcing they're about to do. So we've already escalated past the Russians and others.
Yeah, we are at the point where it's very possible before the end of the year, Russia will strike a NATO country. And all hell breaks loose after that. It becomes very dangerous.
And it's because you've got politicians and lawyers who are being told by the Pentagon, don't do this, who are telling the generals, sit down and shut up. We know what we're doing. And so
Yeah.
I use this analogy a lot on my show because it's a great film, because it's based, I saw a documentary on the hundreds of hours of recordings of the Deepwater Horizon with BP, whatever it was, 15, 18 years ago, whatever it was. And you had non-engineers at BP send orders to the deepest well ever drilled that they thought was going to hit the biggest deposits ever. And the engineer said, if we hit deposits anywhere near what you think, if you don't put the 30, 40, $50 million a day of concrete into the hole on top of it with the pressure, it will blow up and be the biggest oil spill in the world and kill everybody on the rig. It'll explode. It's gas, too. It's going to ignite. And there's famous recordings, and they do it word for word in the film with Kurt Russell. Because I saw the documentary later from the actual trial with the audio tapes. And they said, we're a $48 billion company. We're about to be $50 billion next week if we don't put this concrete in. We're ordering you to not dump the concrete in the hole. And they followed the orders, and it blew up a few hours later. So what's happening is you had BP executives that weren't engineers telling engineers to do things that they knew weren't going to work. They still follow the order. And the question is, will the Pentagon follow orders that they know?
I wonder, did those executives go to jail? Probably not. Now I want to look into that later.
Will blow everything up. I mean, Joe Kenton people didn't just resign for no reason. He was encouraged by higher up in the Pentagon. He was willing to take one from the team, his former superiors, to take that dive as a prominent, high-level official. And so that's what this is all about, is we need more people like Joe Kent, who's a hero, to come out and say, this is insane, stop it. And so it's a direct parallel to the Deepwater Horizon, except this won't be an oil spill and a bunch of crew workers getting killed. This will be nuclear war.
That's the movie
Yes.
with Mark Wahlberg.
Yes.
That's a good movie. I didn't know it's based on true events. I didn't know this.
100%. No, it's based on because they have the transcripts, the emails, and the
comparison as
audio
well.
tapes. Yeah, because the BP executives recorded all the phone conversations. So the only difference is they have them in conference rooms arguing on the rig. No, it was in the conference rooms on the phone. And it's word for word from the thing where they're like, this is going to blow up. They go, no, it's not. Executives have ordered it.
Insane.
So you said unless more people do what Joe Kent is doing. We saw that photo that went viral that Marjorie Taylor Greene posted. It was her, I think her husband, Joe Kent, his wife, Tucker, and Massey and his wife on the table having dinner.
Alex Jones is such a wealth of information, given how long he's covered the news, and he knows the real stories to so many events. It's always a joy to watch him.
And Tucker obviously starting a new movement. How significant is this, and could it make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I've never met him in person. He'd been on our shows before, but I in Dallas for this debate that Brandon Strauch put on that airs in like a week. I was on the panel of America First versus the MAGA neocon panel. And so it was like a 4-hour debate, so I got to hear all his angles. I also talked to him privately and interviewed him. I just shared that today. It's at Real Life Shows on X. You're welcome to play it any of you want.
Who's that? Who's that with?
That's Joe Kent.
Joe Kent on. Oh, yeah, nice.
And he basically, to answer your earlier question, he just pointed out that he said, listen, it's the consensus. It was all the military leadership. It was in the report, don't do it. He just felt like maybe because Trump liked him and knew him, if he went public to get Trump to off-ramp this 2 weeks in, that he would do it. And then he went further. I said, during the panel, but also later I talked to him, I said, well, I saw you meet with Massey and MTG and a bunch of other people at Tucker's hunting lodge / studio in Maine. I said, let me guess, can we inject enough issues in to save the Republican Party and get them to course correct because they're concerned about a third party? Or is this, you guys, if you have to, will do a third party if they become a total nuclear war party? He said, no, that's exactly it. And he elaborated, I don't want to give away the whole thing, but time's of the essence. He said, in the panel debate, he said, we're trying to inject real issues in the Republican Party. We're trying to get them to course correct. And then if that does it, we're going to try to find candidates that are already in office and people in government, to resign and speak out, or whistleblowers, but also people just to run so that we can make this a major spoiler alert for the Republicans that the majority of your voters don't want giant, unending new world wars. And so whether it works or not, this is the best shot we've got as a responsibility to say no to this. And so that's what they're doing. And that was a great question. So they're not trying to get into power. They're not trying to take over the Republican Party. They're not trying to launch a new third party for the Democrats. They are sitting back saying, we have the credibility. The Democrats act like they're anti-war, but they don't really lift a finger to do it. We have a responsibility to try to stop this. So they're open to answer your question simply. Should have just gone to that is, it's to influence the Republican Party, to get a debate going, and to try to find out who in the Republican Party at the state and federal level agrees with America first and doesn't want an expanded, bankrupting war, bare minimum, probably a nuclear war. Or then if they have to, they believe the American people would, even though third parties haven't worked before.
They've never worked before. They won't work again. The third party, I've watched them be spoilers in an election. They get at most 15%. It would take 2-3 presidential election cycles for the third party to be big enough to actually win. And there'll be spoiler between them. It's like handing the Democrats 2 guaranteed victories in the presidential election. Considering the current Democrats, that'd be suicidal for us as a country to have a third party. If you're talking about a third party that's taking votes practically only from Republicans, yeah, that's just screwing over sane people in America. I'm very, very, very against Tucker Carlson's idea of a third party. Do what Trump did. He changed the Republican Party. He ran for president. He hijacked the Republican Party and took it over and reshaped it. That is how you get change in America. But that's America, because the way our election system work here. Some place like Britain, where it's parliamentary system, third party makes sense there. And I encourage them there.
That things are so dire, the revolutionary spirit is so great that we could take that and not have it be a violent revolution, but put it into a third party movement using the libertarians that are already on the ballot as a vehicle. Libertarians, are milquetoast, always weak candidates. The platform overall is good. There's a belief that at least you've got to make a shot at it if we're dealing with total megalomania out of the Republicans.
If we're dealing with total megalomania out of the Republicans, then you primary those Republicans and make sure they're not even on the ballot.
That reminds me, so when I posted that image, I'm going to ask you a question on Laura Loomer, and I remembered Laura Loomer, yeah, and the whole Ukraine Zelensky thing. So when I posted that image, she quoted me, obviously she would have been attacking them through me. And I just started thinking, and I asked Joe about it a few days ago as well, because she attacks him all the time. About the whole Laura Loomer side, because I was with Joe Kent when I saw Laura Loomer's post about quoting me, attacking me in the image, and I asked Joe, asked him about the Zelensky thing, the flip by Laura, from completely anti-Ukraine and Zelensky to suddenly being their biggest fan, and I asked him the question, do you think a lot of these influencers are being paid by foreign governments? And probably you're a perfect person to ask that question because you've been in the game for a long time, you've seen a lot. Does it happen that often? Because I know sometimes it's also weaponized. Like whenever you don't like someone, he's being funded by this, or Tucker's being funded by Qatar. Just make shit up. But in other cases, it just looks very bizarre. Laura Loomer, I was speaking to Max Blumenthal about it a couple of days ago. He was telling me how she also went to the factory of a multi-billionaire who funded the whole trip or something along those lines. Are we seeing, and it's mainly obviously by Israel's doing a really good job at it, but other countries as well, I'm sure Gulf countries, I'm sure Ukraine, I'm sure Russia, China, all trying to interfere in US politics and gain the support of the people that have a big voice and a big following. Is it a problem? Are we seeing American voices being funded by foreign entities?
Well,
on some level, probably yes.
I mean, I really am a leading expert on this. Just because I've been around 32 years, and I could teach a college course on it, so it's hard to answer it succinctly. But let me explain it this way.
I knew it. It's a good question for you.
There was some foreign governments and involvement and propaganda, but mainly the NGOs. And not just Democrat NGOs, that they were the main ones, leftist NGOs trying to get people on the payroll. They tried to get me on the payroll many times over the last few decades. The left was the kings of owning grassroots, as they would say it. Whether it was protesters, activists, law firms, ACLU used to be pretty good. They got taken over in the last decade by Soros money. So the left used to own the covert money. I mean, compared to the Republicans, they didn't even hold a candle to it. But then when Trump got reelected via Joe Rogan and all the other podcasts, and when the system finally figured out, podcasts and the internet, and Elon Musk, the 1 billion listeners when he had Trump on, that is not just bigger. Old media is dead, other than literally people in nursing homes. Now, since Trump...
I wish that were true. It's dying, but it's not dead yet, unfortunately. How can you said legacy media is dead when you have the president of the United States that watches 3 hours of Fox News a day?
2 years ago, there is just a flood of money. And everybody I know, a lot of them off record, they're getting offers from just you name it, big corporations, foreign governments, you name it. I mean, here's the best way to describe it. Israel admits in the last 18 months, this is mainstream news, look it up, folks, $1.3 billion, and this number's a few months old, of direct Knesset money for influencers that are, quote, pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, and pro-Iran war. And then you have Trump's head of all social media, one of his speechwriters, a few months ago goes on Tucker and says, I was offered $22 million a year at the White House. Don't tell Trump to put out pro-Israel propaganda. That's direct espionage. I mean, here's $20 million. Be pro-Israel. By the way, keep quiet. You have the former campaign head, Parscale. You know, he is an open registered guy of Israel and he gets tens of millions and is financing the stuff. So
I wonder about Nux Taku. I don't think they need to pay him to be pro-Israel. But since he is already pro-Israel, does that mean he would accept money from from pro-Israel groups, especially when he's been demonetized? Oh, I really wish he hadn't been demonetized on YouTube.
It's the time, though. One of these influencers is pro-Israel, and they're one of the biggest footprints. There's others. They're very naked about it. They will give money to, say, an oil company or a PR firm, and then they come and pay you, and then you're given. Israel admits this. You're given, like, the emails, the text messages. Trump's head of all social media, and the guy that went public, they're trying to fire right now, he said they're going to be sent 7 or 8, 9 posts, and also once a day a video with what you're supposed to say. You're supposed to get it out this way, and then we're going to pay them millions of dollars a month. And I'm not just singling out Israel. They've just been very naked. You remember last year, Netanyahu said we had an 8-front war, 8 fronts opened up domestically. But, yeah, you've got all these other countries that are pumping money in, but they're mainly like Qatar's like to universities or, you know, to, oh, here's a plane to Trump. With Israel, it's right down to the ground. And then with somebody like Laura Loomer, I've been told by multiple well-known reporters that she tried to recruit this year.
Well, all that Israeli money, in terms of swaying public opinion, it ain't working.
To come on board with her as kind of their manager.
And it makes sense. They're competing with TikTok videos showing dying children in Gaza and destroyed villages in Lebanon, etc., etc. And all that is negative PR. Money alone can't counter it.
And that the paymaster was going to be Chevron. And so however that works, I'm not demonizing Chevron or her. I mean, she'll take $100 to eat dog food on TV. So I don't even think she's an Israeli operative. I think Laura Loomer is more like a vending machine. Like you've got a bunch of selections, you just put your money in and then hit the button you want. And that's what you get. But no, I mean, here's the thing. They've been smart enough. The only money I ever got offered was like 10, 15 years ago off and on. It would be read these liners on air and run this ad, Nature Conservancy, Sierra Club, $300,000 a month. And it wasn't like join us. It was just put our propaganda out, stop attacking our Agenda 21. I was really fighting them then. Like I was on them, exposing them, taking private property, you know, and it wasn't like they called me with lawyers or, hey, pay you off. It's like, here's the ad we want you to run. We want you to read this on air. And of course I didn't respond. And then the only money I ever took, I didn't even really pay attention to because quite frankly, when I was making, you know, $200,000 a month on YouTube before I got banned, that was a small part of our revenue. So I would just, whatever ads YouTube approved, we had the thing clicked, just accept them. Wasn't even thinking of that. The Air Force spent like 20 grand right before I got banned for whatever reason. The Air Force spent, and there was actually articles. What's the Air Force doing giving Jones money? So the only government money I've ever knowingly took is from Uncle Sam. And there wasn't strings attached. It was like, join the Air Force, you know, Air Force. But
I have no idea what type of ads to run on my YouTube videos because they don't show it to me. Honestly, I'm not curious enough to find out.
But see, they spend so much money. I just had a big channel. The way I looked at it after I found out about it for the fact, I took the first payment, didn't know. And then I was like, I think I took one more before they pulled it because then I got banned. I was like, well, okay, they're running ads. Join the Air Force. You want to join the Air Force? I'm not against that. So I would take money if I don't disagree with the message, but I'd be like a NASCAR driver. I'd wear it on my sleeve. You know, like I'm funded by this, this, and that. And this is why I stand for that. So without even trying to get money, I've been paid by Uncle Sam, but I've refused the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, and all those groups. They made a real effort when I was putting films out on them and exposing them. Like I walk in, the sales guys go, hey, we got emails from Nature Conservancy Sierra Club. They want you to do live liners, interview guests, run these ads. I was just like, don't even respond back because obviously I knew what that was. But I've never had the Israelis or the Iranians or anybody try to hire me. I've had like the Russians say, hey, if you're ever coming to Moscow, Lavrov wants to have dinner. And I've had, stuff like that, but that's about it. So
That I don't think is even bad. It's yeah, Alex Jones is a very famous individual in of himself, and of course, foreign leaders might want to meet with him.
it was a test of what I know.
Did you have that dinner with Lavrov?
No, I said, thank you for the invite. And thank you for that. And I said, I just, the optics of it, I said, I'd love to see Russia. I've been invited by Christian groups about 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Come on a junket to Israel, all paid. And just because they were, even then I knew what it was, Christian Zionist groups, I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I guess the more I think about it, I think of many other cases. And I want to see Israel and I want to see Russia. But at the same time, the optics of it is they're going to say I'm on their payroll, so I haven't done it.
Yeah, that's smart and sad.
As a final question,
Sad that he can't visit countries because he's afraid of being accused of being a Russian plant.
don't know if you want to name names, but I'm genuinely curious about this. Because who do you think is being paid? I would put the only one I would, if I had to guess, I'd say Laura Loomer by Ukraine. I'm sure Israel's paying a few influencers. I don't know. The Qataris seem to be funding it through universities. That's what one of my guests told me. That's how they try to gain influence.
Well, you can look where they give it. It's just directly to the universities. And then the UAE is trying to position Islam as not radical, so it spends a ton of money trying to get radical Muslims deported. So I'm sure you know that, right? So it's not like all these Muslim countries act in concert. Is my point.
Interesting. You're saying that UAE is funding to get people, people that support groups that are aligned with extreme Islam to be deported from the US or from the UAE?
The UAE is like heavily involved in all these groups that spotlight Islamic groups it doesn't like. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, the UAE is like...
Well, that's good, I think.
Heavily running around policing. And it's in a big propaganda war. In fact, a lot of the Qatar money, I think Qatar's up to like $40 billion in propaganda spending a year now. Most of that's because they're trying to match the UAE. So you got the UAE and Qatar in a big propaganda battle over the West. So they got Qatari politicians and leaders like, I'm sure you...
This is true. They don't allow extremism here. That is very good. Wish it was like that everywhere. I don't like extremism in any religion. Just look at what extreme Zionism, extreme Jewishness gives us in the Middle East. It's not good either.
See the clips like, don't ship Muslims in. They're shipping the radical ones. They're discrediting us. Kick them out. Deport them now. What are you doing?
Yeah, I've heard that UAE criticizing UK because of the Islamic extremism there. That's sad. There shouldn't be Islamic extremism in the UK.
Oh yeah. Oh, the UAE is like all over that. They're but here's the thing. You got Qatar funding the radical Islamists in Sudan. Let me tell you, Israel is paying a lot of influencers. I mean, 1.3 billion. And I know because not just the 1.3 billion, Israel admitting it.
1.3 billion.
You've got Netanyahu meeting in all these meetings with the Christian Zionists and other people, and then meeting secretly with a whole bunch of conservative influencers. And it's Chatham House rules. They're not supposed to, talk about it. And so how this works is kind of like Benny Johnson and others who I don't think's on the Russian payroll. What happens is you get a big ad buy that's an ad sharing deal, or we're going to grab your videos and put them on an ad share, but then you're supposed to take our ad share and put it on your feeds, and then you sign on to that, and then you learn the Russians are 30% owners of the company. So much of it you don't ever even know you're being funded. In fact, I have no doubt that at some point, who knows who's funding me? I have no idea. Just because.
But you know if they're trying to influence what you say, if they don't want you to say something, or they want you to say something specific, that's where you should get some red flags.
Exactly. I mean, I'll never take money to say something, but I think a lot of the time is you get money because somebody likes what you're already saying, and then a lot of these influencers know how to parrot what the people being paid off are doing, because then suddenly they get paid off. But I mean, I can tell you right now, because I scan stuff like you do, not as good as you, don't know how you stay on top of it. It's just crazy.
For a record, it should be obvious, but I'm not taking money from anyone.
I will see the same, particularly with Israeli propaganda. I will see the same thing put out by hundreds of accounts instantly at the same time. And I've been through propaganda myself targeted. That was by the CIA and the DOJ. It's been declassified with the stuff they did to me after the censorship and the buildup. Kind of set the precedent to ban people. I was like a beta test. And you would see hundreds of articles sometimes a day published the same second. That's because they're given money. They're told to embargo. They all say, fine, we'll publish it, but we want it to be at the same time. so that other people don't get in advance. So you learn these little glitches in the matrix to see where it is. But I mean, here's Candace Owens, and I've got issues with Candace Owens, and some of the things she said and done. I don't
Same here, actually.
censor her. I disagree sometimes, but overall, I think she's a good person. I think she's been on to some really accurate stuff. But when you saw, what was it, 6 months ago, thousands of posts the same hour, Candace Owens is a demon. And then it leaked out that influencers were given money to say Candace Owens is a demon. And so, yeah, when you see a unified story, remember the old Pfizer videos where it would show one guy saying it's safe and effective, it would cut to 2, 3, 4, then 100, and then it would cut to the next clip, and it was all a script. So basically, you got the
You can do that with evening news montages, evening news across the United States, all saying the same thing.
you got corporations, you got BlackRock, you've got all these special interests, you've got the universities, you've got the teachers unions, you've got all of it. But with Israel, their laser focus with AIPAC, we want censorship people to criticize us, and we want total war, and we want unlimited funding, and we want access to your Defense Department, and we want Section 219 of the Defense Authorization Act passed. So the reason Israel is so successful is the left and other groups kind of fire in all directions and, get control of the State Department and fund billions for transgenderism. And it's a large broken coalition. But when you get to Israel, it is laser focused. And that's why they're so successful.
But their success is waning recently. Just look at popular opinion. U.S. support for Israel is not long for this world, even with Section 219. 219 can be passed, but a new bill reversing 219 can also be passed. And that will happen at some point if popular opinion continues to turn against Israel. Yeah. The 219 might keep it going a little bit longer, maybe making it harder to cut off. But eventually, aid to Israel will get cut off if a vast majority of the U.S. turns against it.
Always a pleasure, man.
Yep, this was a great video. I enjoyed reacting to it. Alex Jones also always has great opinions, and he's a great speaker. Funny, if you do something for decades, you end up being very good at it. And he is very good at speaking about all kinds of issues. Anyway, this will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Come watch on Kick or Twitch. And I'll see you next video. Bye.